ESPN, our next game is called One and Done or Super Bowl Run. Graziano, the Commanders. One and done or Super Bowl run?
I went with Super Bowl run just because I don't think they're going to be one and done. I think I'm going to maybe pick them to beat the Bucs this week. So my answer is somewhere in between, but I understand we have to rhyme it. So I will say Super Bowl run, even though I don't really expect them to get to the Super Bowl. I don't think the Commanders are one and done.
Oh, I love that Graziano plays along with the game. Neek, the LA Rams, one and done or Super Bowl run?
Graz didn't play along with the game. He just pulled back the curtain. So I say they're one and done. There's no chance that they make a Super Bowl run. They're going up against the Minnesota Vikings are coming into their place with a much more talented team and a team that's played better. Although the Rams have beat them earlier in the season, that's how you play the game, Graz.
Jeff, next. Steelers, one and done or Super Bowl run?
I'm going one or done. What do we call it? You call it tumbling through the season?
Tumbling, yeah.
And then they're going to tumble them into playoffs. So I'm just going to keep it consistent all the way. What are you wowing? It's not an insult.
I mean, it is an insult. It is an insult. It's definitely an insult. It's an insult.
He's taking a very average team to the playoffs that aren't as good as the team they're playing. They're playing the Ravens, your favorite team.
So why is it Tomlin when he loses?
Because he's overperformed in the regular season to give you hope that's going to get crushed in the postseason because his team's not that good.
I just feel like you're just too negative a person. I think that's the problem.
I love you. Let's live in this. So we don't have to play the Shefty again. We played it earlier. Shefty on Sunday NFL Countdown, when he was doing his spiel about all the different coaches, who's in, who's out, who's going to get fired, who's not, he mentioned, and it got buried because there was all this immediate stuff, that he believes there will be teams that are going to call the Steelers to check on whether or not they would be willing to trade Mike Tomlin, which we have seen happen before. Coaches have been traded before. Mike Tomlin has been the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 18 years. He's going to the Hall of Fame. I think it is inarguable that he has done an outstanding job there. However, there is no greater discrepancy, in my opinion, having been around this a long time, and I used to host a radio show, so you deal a lot in the local media when you do that stuff. There's no greater discrepancy than there is between the way the national media, people like us, perceive Mike Tomlin and the way the local people in Pittsburgh perceive Mike Tomlin. The Steeler fans are ready to move on. They do not think he's a great coach. They do not. That is the way they view it. And I don't think it would be extraordinarily unpopular locally if the Steelers did entertain that possibility. Again, to be clear, I'm not on that side. I'm just presenting that side.
Thank you for not being on.
What do you think of it?
It's craziness. People are too close to it if they believe that. That's why I said, Tom, he's taking teams that aren't as good as the other teams to the playoffs consistently. Are they losing the playoffs? Yeah, because they face better teams. They're usually a bottom seed. I think the last time they were a higher seed was when they were 11-0 or 11-1 or whatever it was, and they ended. But other than that, he's taking average teams and making the most of them. That's what you want out of your head coach. Unfortunately, they haven't been good enough. That doesn't just fall to the head coach. The team as itself hasn't been there.
Obviously, I agree with you guys. But, I mean, to try my best to put some logic behind what the fans are saying is, or what some of the fans might feel is, the point is winning a championship.
Right.
Like, I think many of the fans would trade half or all of those over 500 seasons for a deep run in the playoffs, a shot at a Super Bowl. So I think they would rather have the big ring than all this other stuff. And they don't feel like there's a future. Like they don't, it doesn't seem like, oh, we're right there, because they are always right there, but they're always right there without the expectation that they're going to get the step above, and whether that's on Tomlin or not. And so while I think you're right, it might be popular locally, you know where it would be more popular? Everywhere else in the league would be so excited that Mike Tomlin was available.
Yeah, I think there are coaching situations that aren't open that might open if Mike Tomlin became available. He's that well regarded, and for good reason. The Steelers always win at least as many games as they should, right? Like, given their talent level. Now, would you like to have a better roster, and then maybe he can elevate that to a Super Bowl contender? He does have a Super Bowl title. He went to another one. So it's not like he can't or never has done that. Fans, I think, they want to win championships. Be careful what you wish for, right? Like the Giants won a Super Bowl 13 years ago, and, you'd trade the Giants last 13 years for the Steelers last 13 years, even though they're both title free. So it's degrees of a thing. I remember, look, I mean, it got to a point in Philadelphia where they were done with Andy Reid. Like, it wasn't going to happen there for him. And obviously, the Chiefs hired him 4 days later, and the rest is history. So you do get to that point. I don't think the Steelers organization is anywhere near that point. And I think that's what's important to underline.
I think the problem, though, for me is when you're talking about the Doug Petersons of the world and the Andy Reeds of the world, they felt like their team, their roster was good enough to continue to win, and their coaches weren't getting them there. I would say it's the opposite in Pittsburgh. They haven't had a very good offensive line. They had Kenny Pickett. Now, if you're assigning that to Tomlin, then I'm with you. I agree. Okay, if you think that he's been in charge of those things and he hasn't been able to meet the mark, then that's a conversation we can have. But as far as on the field coaching, I mean, I didn't love the Russell Wilson and the no timeout late in the last game, but other than that, he doesn't make a lot of errors that put his team behind the 8 ball. In my opinion, it's talking two different conversations.
Let me play RC for you guys. So Ryan Clark was talking about this, and RC, of course, played for Mike Tomlin, won a championship with Mike Tomlin, and I can tell you, loves Mike Tomlin. This is what RC said about it.
And as much as we love Mike Tomlin, we have to be honest. It is year after year of showing promise, of giving hope, and then falling flat early on in the playoffs. There has to be some change in that pattern.
So is the change, we need to get a better quarterback? At the end of the day, I mean, they won like crazy when they had Ben Roethlisberger when he was still at or near his peak, and it has fallen off since then. They've been just good enough to sneak into the playoffs since then with a diminished Ben Roethlisberger. Then they go to Kenny Pickett, and now they got two quarterbacks.
Rudolph and,
quite candidly,
somebody.
They're playing this season with two quarterbacks that nobody wanted. That is a legitimate right. That's a literal statement.
For minimal cost because both, everybody else was done with them. Yes.
And the defense continues to play. Well, they haven't been as great late in the season, but they're very good, and that's been the character driving force. The style in which they play is not a way that we feel great about winning a championship, but they have to play that style because they are shorthanded as far as talent. Like their best offensive player is Pickens, and he's not someone that you feel like you can rely on week in and week out.
Like catching it.
I feel the need to ask one more question. I believe he's been there 18 seasons.
Yes.
That is an extraordinarily long run in American sports now, under any circumstances. Now, the Steelers are a unique situation. They've had 3 coaches since 1969. I get it, right? Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin, literally going back to the last time the Jets won the Super Bowl. That's how long it's been that way. But is there anything to be said?
The answer is no.
Just for a change of face, a change of voice. Mike Tomlin would get another job the next day. We get it and all that. Is there anything to be said for that?
That means that you've lost the locker room in some way, or you feel like you're not connecting. Change just for the sake of change, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
If you're saying like, man, his message has gotten old, it doesn't feel that way. And you go through the history of the success that he's had, and with particular players, he's had success with really unique personalities and achieved high results.
And they're not.
I'm trying to be nice.
They're not winning fewer games than expectation. I think that's the part that I understand the fans' frustration in those Super Bowl. But if you're winning 4 games a year and you're supposed to be winning 10, I get it. It's done the opposite. I think that goes more to coaching. It's just a tough call. I get the Super Bowl conversation, but man, his teams ain't good enough to win Super Bowl.
In the meantime, I always say no one says words better than Mike Tomlin does. And speaking of words, let's do the most dangerous ones in all of television.